In the WWE, there is a lot of people that come and go. There is a lot of people that have long careers in the WWE. You think of a guy like John Cena, The Rock, Stone Cold Steve Austin. They're always going to be around in the WWE. However, today, we're going to look at some of those lesser known people who maybe had a short run in the WWE, but possibly could have made something work if the circumstances were different. Whether it's personal reasons, whether it's injuries, whether it's creative has nothing for them, or a huge world event that caused these characters to be taken off of WWE television. Honestly, my opinion, all of these guys could have done something great if their career would have lasted a little bit longer. Today, we're going to look at 5 superstars who should have made it in the WWE. Nizamber, Wizan, Iziz, Kizarny. I can't really Carney speak, but it is Carney Kizarny. We're going to call him Kizarny as his name. He's also known as Sin Bodhi. If you know him now, you might see him on the independent scene getting some work. I actually got to see him at Midwest All Pro, and what a fun match that was. I think he's really honed into his craft since he left the WWE, but this is a guy that could have made it in the WWE. Before we knew anything about who Kizarny was on WWE, he was wrestling independent. And what drew WWE to him was that he had this unique character of a carnival sideshow act. He was a legit carny. He knew sword swallowers, he knew magic people, and he could do it all himself. But for whatever reason, they didn't really tap into that when he came into the WWE. Now let's talk a little bit about FCW at this time. FCW was sort of a developmental territory for the WWE, but it wasn't like NXT is today. I think if Kizarny was in NXT today, he'd have the tools to succeed, but for whatever reason, FCW was sort of just like an afterthought to WWE. They'll put guys down there. They would barely sell any tickets, things like that. Now NXT is a global brand. It's got its own huge following all over the world, and they do live specials all the time. So Kizarny comes in, he does all this cool stuff in the independent scene, but for whatever reason, they wanted to water it down. We were in the PG era of the WWE. We all know how the PG era works. They don't really want to push the envelope. They want to sell it to kids. A problem with Kizarny is that nobody knew if he was supposed to be a good guy or a bad guy. That was the problem. We didn't know if he was going to be fan-friendly or a bad guy or what he was going to do, but down in FCW, he had actually turned into a bad guy and the fans did not like him, and that's what they wanted. That's what he would have been doing if they would have pulled him up to the main roster and continued that streak. Now, what actually happened with him is he had 8 promos, like I mentioned. He came up on SmackDown and actually had a match with MVP. MVP had an open challenge type match. He had a match, and it was a fine little match, and it was good. It was good enough to get him on TV so people could see what he can do. He actually won with the Future Shock DDT, won that, and went on to do nothing. He had one more stint, which is a Battle Royal for the Elimination Chamber qualifying. So if you won the Battle Royal, you'd qualify for the Elimination Chamber. But unfortunately, he was thrown out early. A fun side note is that Colt Cabana, aka Scotty Goldman, was also in this Battle Royal, and he got tossed over the top. Now, there's a lot of things that could have happened with Kizarny in the WWE, but they didn't want to push the envelope with him. If you're ever at an independent show where you get to see the true Kizarny, you can see that he actually hones into his craft and he does a great job. I think there's a lot more that could have been with Kizarny, but for whatever reason, WWE never really wanted to use him. Before we get to the next one, I want to talk about a little side note that I mentioned in the last one. Let's talk about Scotty Goldman. Scotty Goldman, known as Colt Cabana. If you've seen independent wrestling, if you've heard about independent wrestling, Colt Cabana is a guy on your radar. I don't know why WWE, TNA haven't snatched him up and put him on television. WWE had him for Scotty Goldman, and I don't think that they really knew what he was. I think given more time, they could have grown the Colt Cabana character into something that would have been marketable for the WWE brand. Again, I think WWE just didn't know what they had when they had Scotty Goldman. If they'd let him just be Colt Cabana, he could be successful. But honestly, he's a guy that I think is better off on his own. hear me, fear me. In 2004, we started to see vignettes for a character called Mordecai. He was a religious type character dressed in all white, and he was a crusader of sin. He had the white hair, the white beard, and the white attire because it was a sign of purity. He debuted on the SmackDown brand at the Judgment Day pay-per-view in 2004, having a match against Scotty 2 Hotty. Right away, I was interested in this character because of his entrance. WWE went all the way with the build-up, the promos, and the entrance of Mordecai. He had a good match against Scotty 2 Hotty, winning with the outsider's edge. In later appearances, he condemned the audience for their sins and led them into prayer. The Mordecai gimmick was created specifically as a foil for The Undertaker. He was going to have a match with The Undertaker, and that was the reason he was brought in. He wore all white, The Undertaker wore all black. He had the religious undertones just because he couldn't get over, and reasons saying that he was a little too green is why the character didn't work. We can also blame it on the fact that he was involved in a bar fight. Now, with an impending lawsuit, WWE is forced to take him off television. Now, as you can remember, Mordecai left, went to OVW, and ended up coming back sometime in ECW as Kevin Thorne. Now, Kevin Thorne was a vampire gimmick. It was completely different than the Mordecai gimmick, and honestly, I like the Mordecai gimmick better. If circumstances were different, WWE could have made something out of Mordecai. All the puzzle pieces were right. The build-up promos, the entrance. For whatever reason, they just picked the wrong guy. He was either too green, or maybe it was because of the bar fight. But Mordecai never made it when I thought he could have. If you know what I'm singing, you'll remember Muhammad Hassan. He was an Arab American blaming everybody in the WWE and the audience of being racist. That's right, they're pushing the envelope against Muslim Americans, saying that people think that he was a terrorist. Wow, what a storyline to go with right off the bat, right around 9/11 attacks. You go straight for that, and wow, you got some sensitive people, and this happened in 2004. Now, as it progressed on, he actually did a couple cool things. At WrestleMania 21, he had an in-ring promo with Eugene, which actually led to Hulk Hogan coming out. At Backlash in 2005, Hassan and Daivari, who was his manager, actually lost to Hulk Hogan and Shawn Michaels in a tag team match. Now, what actually happened was he went through his career and he got drafted to SmackDown. There is controversy that comes out of this. This is probably one of the most controversial moments in all of WWE. The Undertaker had a match and he was fighting Daivari. The Undertaker defeated Daivari, but then Hassan started to prey on the ramp. He summoned 5 masked men dressed in black shirts, ski masks, and camel pants, armed with clubs and piano wire. They beat and choked the Undertaker out. Hassan put him in the camel clutch, and afterwards the masked men lifted Daivari above his head and carried him away. 3 days later, London bombings took place. Talk about bad timing, right? The angle got huge publicity. It got huge worldwide national attention, and it was revealed later that UPN actually wanted to keep Hassan off television. They said, this is too controversial. We can't have this on television. They watched segments and they were editing them. And they just said, you know what? Let's keep him off television. He had a match with The Undertaker at the Great American Bash, where The Undertaker basically last righted him off the stage through the concrete floor, and he was never seen again. Several days later, they were sent back to developmental, and their contracts ran out. there was a huge push that was right around the corner for Muhammad Hassan, even winning the World Heavyweight Championship from Batista at SummerSlam and breaking Randy Orton's record of being the youngest World Heavyweight Champion. Hassan actually decided after his contract expired that he would retire from professional wrestling. Talk about bad timing. Muhammad Hassan was very controversial, but for that reason, I really liked him. It's those times where we can push the envelope and we can make people feel a little bit uncomfortable so that they can understand that this is art imitating life. I know the London bombings are a very, very tragic thing, and you can't actually have this going on in WWE while London bombings and serious attacks are happening. If UPN wouldn't have censored it, and the London bombings wouldn't have happened, Muhammad Hassan could have been WWE World Heavyweight Champion. Now we're going to look at the last two superstars who could have made it in the WWE. Now there's a list of a lot more, but we're only going to focus on these. These two came around during the ECW era in WWE. We're talking about Elijah Burke and Marcus Corvon. Now, Elijah Burke debuted on SmackDown in 2006 as the manager of Sylvester Terkay. These two were teamed and sent to the ECW brand in 2006. After a few months of working as a tag team, WWE actually released Terkay, leaving Elijah Burke to fend for himself. Vince McMahon dubbed Elijah Burke the future of ECW, and he became the leader of the New Breed. The New Breed was a group of superstars who were feuding with ECW originals. Now, this all went down to a match at WrestleMania 23, and Elijah Burke would also go on to have some matches with CM Punk and Batista, but then disappeared in 2007. Elijah Burke actually came back in 2008 Royal Rumble and then went on to work a Battle Royal at WrestleMania 24. He worked a few matches on SmackDown after that, but nothing really came of it, and he was quietly released in November. Now, I believe WWE didn't know what they had when they had Elijah Burke. At the time, ECW was a different breed. It was something they were trying to create, and they were trying to create superstars. Vince McMahon said he was the future of ECW, but when in fact, CM Punk was really the future of the company. He was the one guy who came out of ECW who surpassed everybody else and went on to have a bright future in the WWE. I think if WWE could just create one star out of the ECW brand that would go on to have longevity, they would be fine. Elijah Burke eventually went on to make his way to TNA as the Pope D'Angelo Dinero. He was able to kind of break out and become himself, and I think that's where he really shined. I think with a few more opportunities and a little more luck, they could have done something more for Elijah Burke. But unfortunately, WWE just didn't know what they had at the time. We spoke on him a little bit, but Marcus Corvon is the next and final superstar on the list. Part of that New Breed we talked about, along with Elijah Burke, Matt Striker, and Kevin Thorne, actually had a match at WrestleMania. That's right. We said the New Breed fought the ECW originals, Rob Van Dam, Tommy Dreamer, Sabu, and the Sandman. And that would be the height of the career for Marcus Corvon and the ECW New Breed. Now, you might remember Marcus Corvon better in TNA as Monty Brown. He was around in the early days of TNA, going on with 2002 up to 2004, up all the way to 2006, and almost winning the NWA Championship. It would have been a huge career for him if he would have won that championship, but it actually never happened for him. If you haven't seen any of his stuff as Monty Brown in TNA, I guarantee you will love it if you just go back and watch it. Now, let's talk about his WWE run that should have been longer than it was. As we said, he was part of the New Breed stable. ECW on Sci-Fi was going on, and they were trying to make a New Breed versus the original ECW guys. I like the concept, but it just didn't play out very, very well, and these guys didn't really get a fair shake on the main roster when they actually were on there. So the New Breed stuff happened. They had the match at WrestleMania, and it went down that Marcus Corvan would have his final match at Vengeance versus CM Punk in the ECW title finals. In June of 2007, Marcus Corvan took several months off for unspecific family issues. After 3 months of inactivity, WWE announced that they had to release him for his contract without making a return to WWE. Marcus Corvan retired from professional wrestling since being released. If it wasn't for the family issues, I think that Marcus Corvan could have been a WWE breakout superstar. I think they had something there, and I think they wanted to do something with him, but unfortunately, he retired. So there it is. There's 5 superstars who I think, in my mind, could have done more if WWE would have given them a better chance. Mordecai, Kizarny, Muhammad Hassan, Elijah Burke, and Marcus Corvan. Let me know what you think in the comment section below, and let me know, out of all of these guys, which one do you think had the most chance at succeeding in the WWE? Again, if you're new to the channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button. And as always, Tony Beats Guy, 2 Sweet!